Cody Bellinger getting some looks from other teams. Why is the market so slow for the most sought-after free agent and the guy that all of us still consider to be coming home to the Cubs sometime soon? We're going to talk about that. How about Owen Caissie, one of the Cubs' top prospects, outfielder, playing some first base? Is that something to keep an eye on? And much more. Welcome to the Cubs Baseball channel. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up, and let's get this thing started. Go Cubs! So everybody, great to have you on the Cubs Baseball channel with the catfish himself, Chad Anderson. I'm Mick Gillispie. At This Chat Is Real, and I'm at Broadcaster Mick. What's up, Cat?
What's going on, buddy? A couple of people have said my handle should change to catfish. I don't know if I'm ready for that yet.
I'd love that.
I bet you would, yeah.
I think everything you do now in the mortgage world should be Catfish Anderson.
At Real Catfish?
Is
that what it should be going forward?
Yeah, real. I would love that.
Yeah. We'll think about it.
Back. We got rave reviews for our Saturday show. We went a little long that day. I fixed the audio since you came back, but full disclosure, it's your fault. Yeah, it's your fault that I sounded bad that day, and it's your fault I sound great now, man. Thanks for this new board, man. Thanks, brother.
Yeah, I'm glad I got put to good use. So, it's one of those COVID impulse buys when everybody was creating home studios a few years ago. And, you do more stuff with it than I do. So, hey, it's in good hands and being put to good use here.
That's been great, man. I got this and a new car on the same day, like all the technology, figuring this thing out. But I appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Just adding into that consumer debt in the country, aren't you?
Gotta be. I had 316,000 miles on my car.
You did, yeah. You ran that one pretty hard, yeah.
Well, let's talk about the Cubs adding to their consumer debt. Cody Bellinger and the Cubs. There's so much talk when you listen to what everyone is saying, all the experts, that they feel like eventually this is going to happen, that eventually he's going to come back and join the Cubs. Here's a list. I'm going to pop it up right now from Fox Sports of the top free agents that are out there. Of course, he's number one on the list, and they say they got the Cubs logo at the top. They think he's eventually coming back to the Cubs.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be real interesting because the Cubs have just never been known to make the big splash. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 99% sure the Cubs have never had a contract over $200 million. And that's what Bellinger is seeking. So it's just really interesting to see this play out. And I don't know what to make of it either, Mick. You and I were at winter meetings in Nashville and hanging out at the Opryland Hotel and everything. And not much happened that week. It was really Juan Soto was the big deal on that one. And Major League Baseball has just been a slow grind with this market and this free agency in this offseason. I really don't know what to make of it. I mean, Hader got picked up the other day with the Astros, but look at those names, man. Like massive names still out there on the market right now. And I don't know if you've got a specific opinion as to why, but I'm just sitting here like kind of dumbfounded a little bit that we're less than, 3 weeks, 4 weeks from spring training?
Day. Yeah, Valentine's Day. Look, I read a great story on CBS Sports that kind of talked about why the market's slow this year. And the four main points were not a great class of free agents. I mean, some good free agents, but, Cody Bellinger, Jordan Montgomery. I mean, this is, in their opinion, and I'm not disagreeing, right? There's been years where it's just superstar packed. And on this list, it's okay, right? They said that Boras controls the top of the agents, right? The players, and he's a guy that likes to grind it out and likes to be slow. I think that plays the biggest part in the fact that things have gone so slow. quality trade candidates, they say, and that's true. I mean, think about the Cubs. Like you've heard rumors of them maybe making a deal with Tampa Bay. That didn't happen for Glass now, but we've heard that. And then Cleveland, obviously. And that leads into the fourth thing they said is the regional sports networks. And a lot of these teams have had these regional sports networks are going out of business. These contracts that players are getting have been based on those TV contracts, right? That's where a big chunk of the income that you have to go out and spend on free agents. Obviously, it didn't stop the Dodgers. They have their own TV deal, and they're fine in that aspect. But a lot of these other teams are, so if you're in Cleveland and you don't have that money, you may have to trade just out of business sense to say, hey, you know what? I mean, we'd love to have these guys, Shane Bieber type guys, but if we can't afford them, then they got to go.
Well, that's what the Padres did. Remember, the Padres couldn't make payroll in September, and they had to go take out a loan for, I believe it was $40 million.
Crazy.
To make payroll for the last month of the regular season. And then that's what triggered trading Juan Soto. And then, of course, Hader and Snell are on the free agent market, or Hader was. But yeah, this goes back. I've said it a few times on a few different shows with you. Like I'm still worried about Major League Baseball in the long run, just because of the way it's set up and the players union and everything of this bubble and holding out for these massive contracts. And it's like the money just has to be there. And I don't know where it's coming from. And so all of those, very good, very valid points. Could it also be, Mick, you and I have talked about that next year's class is just insanely packed.
Right.
And so could people be saving their pennies, looking ahead at next year, going, we make a deal now, it's going to be less money to spend in the 2024, 2025 transition.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like you're the Cubs and you're going, we want Juan Soto, and I'm sure they do. Obviously, he was traded to the Yankees, but he's going to be a free agent, right? And
it's a 1-year deal.
Yeah, he's not going to sign because guess who his agent is? Scott Boras. That's what he's not going to do, is that sign an extension, right? Yeah. So of this list, Cody Bellinger, obviously number one on the list. I don't think that the Cubs are doing anything wrong by waiting out the market. Because just what you just said, I mean, everyone would like to see Cody Bellinger come back, but you don't want to put your franchise in a bad place because of a Cody Bellinger contract that you just don't feel like makes sense. And he's asking for more money than he's worth, or somebody would have paid it by now, and that price has to come down. And I'm sure that the Cubs are waiting on that. But you look at the rest of the list, Jordan Montgomery's not going to make sense for the Cubs. They went out and got Imanaga, so they don't need a left-hander. Same thing with Kershaw or Blake Snell. Justin Turner. I've always been a fan of Justin Turner.
I like his style.
Yeah, I haven't heard his name mentioned with the Cubs. Jorge Soler, know him, love him. Former Cub. They say Blue Jays for him. JD Martinez. I would love to see JD Martinez with the Cubs. I've not heard one even hint of it, right?
No.
But I just like him. I think he's poised to he'll have a big year, you watch, just because people don't believe in him. Now, Matt Chapman and Rhys Hoskins, the next two guys on this list, you keep hearing could come to the Cubs, maybe one or maybe both, right? And then Brandon Belt, they're saying first base with the Tigers. I haven't heard Brandon Belt's name mentioned with the Cubs at all. They do have first base open, obviously, right now. And that's something that we're going to get into here in a second. But interestingly enough, it's the list just doesn't really match the Cubs a lot, just because of all the lefties at the top of the list, except Bellinger. And I think all of us want to see him.
Yeah. Remember, what's it been now? Only 2.5 months. So Craig Counsell's been the skipper for 2.5 months. Remember when we were doing shows about the polar bear?
Yeah,
man, we've come a long way from that, right? Because that was like, oh, the polar bear's coming. Then it was Rhys Hoskins. Then it was Bellinger. It was Ohtani. And the Cubs did grab Imanaga, which is going to be a nice addition to the rotation. But still some pieces out there. And it's just kind of interesting with the waiting game. And then I know the Cubs experimented, a little bit with Morel, and I believe it was the Dominican League, right? And they got some other guys that they keep trying to put in some different places as far as like, hey, will this person work at this position? And that's one less hole to fill, or it opens up a spot for another young guy.
Yeah. Well, that kind of brings me to, the next guy that I wanted to talk about today, and that's Owen Caissie. And the problem that Owen Caissie has is that Owen Caissie plays right field, and you have just an abundance of outfielders, which, I thought led to a trade at the deadline that to me wasn't a great trade. It was an okay trade, but not a great trade. And that was sending Nelson Velasquez out, who is someone that I figured would be an impact player for the Cubs.
I see
But
him being
obviously,
like the Soler. Like
yeah,
I see him being Soler in a different uniform, and the Cubs missing out on that one. I hated to see him go.
yeah. I mean, I think I felt the same way. It was like, well, okay, what's this deal? And, is this something that we really wanna do right now? And, honest to goodness, um, they've gotta try to figure out now other options when it comes to some of their outfield prospects, because they've got so many of them, and there's guys that could be impact players for them, and that includes Owen Caissie, who's a really good outfielder. I mean, like, he's a really good, outfielder defensively, but what the Cubs want is they want to have him as someone that's gonna be able to come in and hit, before, I mean, maybe sooner than later, and I'm not surprised at all. Big dude, left-handed bat, has really smooth moves. He just doesn't look for a big guy. Like he has a lot of finesse, I'll put it like that. And I could see him being a good first baseman just based off of what he does in right field. And so he's in Arizona, according to reports, practicing at first base. So here the Cubs are, right? You got Matt Mervis, you got who made it to the big leagues last year and didn't do too well, and he'll be fighting for a spot this year, right? You got Hayden McGarry, who's a double-A player, who was a catcher, who's tried to play first base. It hasn't, the defensive aspect of it hasn't been a totally smooth transition. I'm curious to see what he looks like this year, though, with an entire offseason of doing that. But he's a great hitter. And now you trade it for Michael Busch, who we're going to talk about here in a second, as a third baseman. But from all indications, the only reason he wasn't playing first for the Dodgers is because you signed Freddie Freeman. And
Mhm.
now Owen Caissie's starting to play some first base. And I got a feeling that in AAA Iowa this year, he's going to play first and he's going to play the outfield. They'll probably have him platooning back and forth. Now, if he ends up figuring out that position, that throws a whole nother guy in the mix. And I think Owen Caissie has the potential to be a big leaguer for a long, long time.
Doesn't it just feel like the Cubs are what's like almost like just throwing some darts at the wall here to see what can come of this? Because Pete Alonso, I think we realized pretty early the price tag was going to be stupid.
Right.
Or that was the report, right? It was just going to be a stupid price tag for a 1 year deal for a guy who is a big bat, put it in the middle of the order. He's going to hit 240, hit 40 home runs. But then he's gone after a year unless you can
Right.
convince him to resign and you give up a prospect or multiple prospects is what it sounded like. And then Reese Hoskins became a target or supposedly a target. And then it was, well, what about Mervis? Okay, well, what if you re-sign Belli? He can play center and first. Well, what about this guy? What about that guy? Oh, Michael Busch. Cubs traded for him. Is he going over to first base and third base, first base? Like which one? It's like they can't figure it out in the sense that they're trying to almost find, I don't know if you call it the lesser of a bunch of evils, but
Right.
it's like, okay, we're willing to spend, but we're not willing to spend this. So if we don't end up spending over here to get this person because we think it costs too much, then we got to have 2 or 3 backup plans. And or you got to go to those teams with the high price tags and say, we've already tried out 2 guys at first base. Like we're fine. We're set. Now, if you still want to trade, we'll do it at a reasonable price, but we're not going to unload the farm to get a 1 year guy to come over here and play first base when we've got 3, 4, 5 different options here.
Right. And then you get to the point where you're dealing with Scott Boras and you're going, okay, there comes that point in anything that you buy where the value of what you're asking for isn't worth the money that you're going to spend. And the
Mhm.
Cubs can't get themselves in those contracts. I mean, you look at teams that do, and bad things happen. You want to have contracts that are good for both sides. That's not what Scott Boras's goal is. It's to
Yeah.
make it good for his side. Players used to be on the other end of that, years ago, that it seemed like all the contracts benefited ownership. There's got to be a middle point on this, and I remember I talk about Gary Hughes, who was the special assistant to Jim Hendry and one of the all-time great people in baseball, the late great Gary Hughes. And he used to talk about, making a deal. You want a deal that's good for both sides, whether you're making a trade, whether you're signing someone, you just want everyone to be happy. You want winners on all sides instead of going, you know what? We want to kill them in this deal because you want to be partners, right? I mean, you sign and then you come in there. You don't want a Jason Hayward situation where everyone in the building knows that Hayward absolutely screwed you in this deal, right? You want a deal where you're like, hey, man, like John Lester, where you're going, you know what, paid John a lot of money, but you know what? The guy has lived up to every bit of it, right?
Steady Eddie, right? That
Yeah,
guy just every time. Yeah.
that's it, man. And so, but the Cubs are giving themselves some options, and Owen Caissie, this guy can absolutely hit. He's got a ton of power, got great hands. He's working on pitch recognition this year, I'm sure, but he is a future star. And for those of you guys in like fantasy baseball or you card collectors, he's a guy to take a risk on because I think that he could be one of these players that explodes on the scene eventually. And we'll see if that's with the Cubs, and maybe that's at first base, which would be, absolutely surprising, but
Well,
also, that's the way that it goes. We all have to sometimes change, Chad, in our lives, in business, to fit into what our boss needs us to do.
well, what's going to be interesting too with this, I just mentioned how the Cubs may be trying to figure out, okay, what about these pieces at first base position? So you can kind of, tell others to kick rocks if they're asking for too much for a certain guy. Same could be said that the Cubs are also trying to figure out what to do with all the outfielders. I mean, if they don't see Casey as a long-term solution or a long-term fit, not a
Or he's
solution because he's not
blocked.
a problem. That's what I mean. He's just kind of stuck. Just what do you do with him? And so you try to find a spot for him, and you put a good player and good talent out on the field, and anywhere you can find them, find a spot for him. That is, but yeah, I mean, if he's blocked, then you have to make a decision, and you go, okay, well, he's blocked, so I got to figure out how to maximize value if we're going to trade him, or I got to find a way to get him on the field and show his value
Right.
and then trade him, or get him on the field and keep him, and then he eventually replaces an outfielder. I don't know, but that could be the other piece of it too, is that they're like, man, we're just loaded with all these prospects before we start trading people
Well, I
in
don't want to see
this year
another
or next year.
Velasquez trade. Yeah,
Well,
I
yeah,
don't
for sure.
don't waste it for a middle reliever, man. I mean, if
No.
you're going to go out and give these guys up, you better get some good returns in their place, And that kind of leads us, and great points, by the way. That leads us to the next thing, and that's MLB Pipeline. I love it, dude. I love MLB Pipeline doing the top 10 list. I don't know all the players, so I can't tell you if the top 10 list is correct or not, but it's fun. And this
You just like the list.
yeah, right. Like this time of year, it's fantastic that they do it, right?
Yeah.
Like I know sometimes I look at the list, and if it's players that I'm familiar with, I have an opinion on, kind of what that how that if that list is accurate or not, because sometimes guys will be on a list and I'll be like, man, this guy, like Moises Ballesteros is not very good at catching, but he's a catcher, right? So he's on the list because he's a really good hitter.
Yeah.
But he's got to do better catching. He's got to throw the ball better. He's got to block better. He's got to do all the catching parts of the job to get to the big leagues and be a catcher, which I hope he does. And I'm looking forward to watching that progress. So here we go, another top 10 list. And this time it is Cubs third baseman, Michael Busch, right? He's the guy that the Cubs got from the Dodgers. And like Matt Mervis, got a little bit of time in the big leagues last year. The funny thing about this, Chad, is he's listed as a third baseman. He's played a lot of third base lately, but he's really a first baseman. So you can put him in the mix now with, Owen Caissie practicing. I'm not putting him there yet. But then, McGarry, who's like was on the top 10 list in the low minor, in double A. And then Mervis, who, is obviously a first base prospect. He played first base for the Cubs last year. So it's just crazy that the guy's good enough batting to be on a list, even though when you look at the statistics and the analytics, which I'm not a huge analytics guy, but I do like some of the defensive analytics. He doesn't score very high, yet he's on there for third base.
Yeah, he's on there. And, that's exactly what we were just talking about when you got Caissie, Mervis, Busch, Morel. Like, is he the first baseman? Are you re-signing Bellinger? What happens to Busch if you re-sign Belli? Is he blocked? Does he become third base? Do you trade Morel at that point and stick with Busch? Because you're probably not going to flip Busch that fast for anything, that's worth the value.
Yeah.
But yeah, but good job by the Cubs, though. Still, another top person in the pipeline, loaded with prospects. I think I saw the Cubs. This was a few weeks ago, but so it may be slightly out of date. But what were the Cubs in the top 2 or 3 farm systems in all of Major League Baseball?
Number 2. A lot of different lists, but Pipeline had them at number 2.
Yeah,
so they're stacked, man. They got a lot of really good players.
Yeah, it's an abundant embarrassment of riches, right? And the key now, and this is where we're really going to see Jed Hoyer's ability to manage a ball club come out, because at this point you've got some money you can spend,
right?
The Ricketts have said they're going to spend. The Cubs being in on Ohtani proved they were willing to spend. They've got a pretty good team right now, not a World Series team, but just a good team. And with a few pieces or some of these young guys coming in, like, they're set up for a really good run, and the window is opening for the Cubs. So I'm really curious. This is where GMs and president of baseball operations and all those roles and titles and your scouts and advanced scouts and player development and whatnot, this is where those guys come in. This is where they earn their keep, because you're going to start moving chess pieces. You can only play 8 guys on the field at a time, guys. You got the pitcher and 8, and that's it. And so they're going to start moving these chess pieces, and only time tells, how it pans out, and you look back on it. But I'm excited, but also very curious to see, which direction they head with some of these, because right there with Michael Busch now, number 7. They're freaking stacked, man.
Yeah. Funny is I said this the other day, that they should take this opportunity to attack the city of Chicago. The White Sox are not sure what they want to do. They want to move. They want a new stadium. You're hearing rumors that they were like looking in Nashville. I don't know that that's going to happen, but if you're the Cubs, and you're in this competition just for your own home city, man, this is a great time to build an awesome team and just kind of try to take the market over.
Yeah, no, it is, man. It's going to be hard when you're trying to outspend teams like the Dodgers, and the Yankees and whatnot. But the Dodgers don't win the World Series every year. They just don't. The Yankees don't either.
Right.
Trust me, they'd love to. They haven't won one since 2009, and it's not from a lack of spending.
No.
So it's a whole lot more than that. So, but this is where, you build the right baseball team and a team that complements each other. You get the right manager in there. That's been part of the Yankees' problem. Is I actually like Aaron Boone, but I don't know, how well he meshes, or how well it just fits, or if it's the front office.
It doesn't, dude. These guys that are coming from the TV booth to manage, with no experience, like, come on, or little experience doing it. I know they know baseball, but look at Brandon Hyde, who won the Manager of the Year, who used to work with the Cubs, and you watch the progression that he had over the years. That's why the guy does a good job. That's why I'm excited about, what we're going to see with Craig Counsell.
Yeah, that's why I'm so excited about Counsell. I can't stress this enough. And we talked about it during the live show we did, which was awesome. I think we were on for 2 hours that day when the story broke, and then when the press conference and everything.
That was cool.
That was so awesome. But I look at Counsell, and the one thing that just continues to give me hope, and like why I'm so excited, just as a fan, because you guys remember, like we're not paid by the Cubs to do this show. Like we're actual fans of this organization. And Craig Counsell took a small market baseball team and consistently won the division. Now, I know he had his struggles once he got into the postseason, but he took a small market team and was always in the conversation. So now you give him more money, more resources, bigger brand, all these different things. Like it's going to be kind of a good mesh and marriage, I believe, jumping in at the right time.
Show's brought to you by the Tennessee Smokies Team Store. If you're a collector, they've got Owen Caissie autographs at their collector's corner, some signed jerseys as well. They've got, Cubs gear, and the Smokies won the championship for the first time in 45 years. That's there as well. So check it out for yourself at smokiesbaseball.com/store. And Chad, you're brought to you by
myself.
Yeah. Catfish.com. No, I'm just kidding. ChadwickAnderson.com.
Maybe that's it. Catfish Mortgages. How about that? What if we go that route? Yeah. Nope. If you want to check us out, ChadwickAnderson.com is the website. You can scan the QR code there on the screen for free appraisal at closing, and the big lender credits that we do at closing as well, to help you on whether you're buying, refinancing, whatever the case may be. Recently, we've helped. I love telling stories. We helped a veteran. God bless the veterans. We helped one who was told twice he didn't qualify. We got him to the closing table, even though 2 others said no. We've helped over 10,000 families in 13 years. We've helped save families last month $400, $600, and $3,300 monthly, not annually, monthly in their budget. So hit me up if you're interested in chatting. No crazy weird timeshare sales pitch. Just the email and phone number there on the screen if you want to reach out.
Hey guys, get in the comments section and tell us what you think. Obviously a lot going on with the Cubs, and again, prayers to Rhino. That video yesterday came from my heart. I know a lot of you guys didn't watch it, but I'm just going to tell you, it meant a lot to me, just like him and his Rhino shirt, just because Rhino's been not only an inspiration, but a good friend for a long time. So we're all praying for him. All right. Thanks for hanging out. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up, and go Cubs.